and welcome to yet another episode of our Uganda Diaspora Show. My name is Lynn Komugisha, and I welcome you to our Civic Space channel on YouTube. Go to our social media platforms on Twitter, on X, well, formerly Twitter. Go to Instagram. We are on TikTok. We are everywhere. Where you need us, you'll find us. So I welcome you, Okota Chen. It's been a minute. Thank you for joining us today. How are you, Miriam? How are you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, our dear viewers and panelists.
Right. There's quite a lot happening. Here and where you guys sit. First of all, are you guys safe? Are you safe, or you're going to be chased out very soon?
At least in Canada, I'm pretty safe. I don't know about my friend in the US, but in Canada.
Yeah, when something happens, I'll come and visit you, Ochen.
You are most welcome anytime.
Hopefully, Miriam, even our other panelists that we usually have are safe.
Yes.
That things remain okay. So, as we shall delve in later, we're going to look at the Trump visa restrictions from different countries, and very many from Africa. But we also want to look at what's happening here in Uganda. It's an election period. We are doing party primaries. Most parties are carrying out their party primaries. We have seen that one of the dailies. When was this? This was on June. This is the weekend paper of the New Vision. It says there's an opinion poll, and it says race to presidency. Who will you choose as your president 2026? And we're seeing that the national cake is taken largely by President Yoweri Museveni and his NRM party, followed very, 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 very far away from the NRM comes National Unity Platform with 19%. We are seeing that Jimmy Akena's UPC has 2.4%. Chiza Best just now which party? Which party is this? The new party. Yeah. That's yes. It has 2.3%, and that's the rest. Mugisha Muntu's aunt and Francis Kamhanda, they have 1%. Amuriat Patrick Oboy have 1%. Muhozi Kainerugaba also has 1%. And these are patches. So, Miriam, I know you're about to raise a question of, is he coming as president? I think it's because of the party, the PLU party. So this is what today's paper looks like, and it's an opinion poll. So, but in those party primaries, as they continue, we have seen that many old dogs of the party have come back, old guys of the party. We saw Moses Ali pick his nomination forms, and trust me, the news of him picking nomination forms was really huge in the country. People made noise about it, questioning his strength, his energies, his health, particularly if he's really suitable and suited to, lead the next 5 years. Away from that, we saw Kamuntu came back. He also picked nomination forms. It's been a minute. He's using old posters from last time, and people really, there's a lot. Miriam, I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, I see.
Mr. Ephraim Kamuntu, Honorable Ephraim Kamuntu is back. So there's a lot in that area. Also, if you remember, during the last election cycle, we saw that there was a clash between Shatsi Musherure and Sodo Kaguta of Zimbabwe, somewhere in Zimbabwe. And they agreed. I remember they were called to SEC, the Central Executive Committee of NRM, And they sat down and agreed between the two, actually, and the party, and said, let Sharure take over this time. You can come back next time. They agreed. But apparently they have both picked nomination forms again. So that is another drama to watch out for. We had youth elections that were marred by violence and a lot of uncertainty, but generally, NRM took the biggest chunk of the youth leadership. There was a military attack on National Unity Platform. Some lady was dressed in an overall, which is called now a jumpsuit, a red jumpsuit, and some military attacked her, threatened to undress her. That's the picture we have here back in Uganda on as we head into the politics. But also on a sad note, the Supreme Mufti the Supreme Mufti of former Supreme Mufti of Chibuli. Yes, the Supreme Mufti of the Chibuli faction. Yes, I was trying to get that. Died, and it's a sad period for the Muslim fraternity. All right, so I want to hear from Miriam, especially how is it that end? How are things going? And then Ochen, you also tell us what's happening, and then we proceed.
It's a nice weekend. Summer has started. It's actually we're gonna be dealing with a heat wave next, beginning with tomorrow. So it's lively. It's fun. It's a lot of shows, a lot of festivals, and a lot of deportations and a lot of politics. I think whatever is the headlines now about war in Iran and Israel. And we are all hoping for peace talks, and I don't know how that is gonna go. But back to Uganda and the issues you highlighted, Moses Ali and Kamuntu. It is so sad, so pathetic, and it shows the pity. I mean, that shows the sad context of our economy, our politics. Most of these old people, I don't think they're just picking papers for politics for the sake of politics, or they are interested in serving the people, quote unquote. I think they're just looking for survival, because if you are not an MP and you don't have all those privileges they have, especially if you are an old person, if you fall sick, what is going to happen to you? So most of these people, they've tested power, they've tested life out of power, and they know they can't survive out of power. That's the situation in Uganda. If you are not a politician, you're on your own, and you can barely make it. If you are not sick, if you sick and you need like special treatment, the referral hospitals are not working. If you don't have money, I don't know how much money you need, because however rich you are, you're gonna be struggling to survive. But if you are an MP, you have all that, the huge salary amount, they give you monthly, you have privileges, you're gonna have medical tourist privileges, and you can get treatment from anywhere you want. So those are things which keep pulling people. And when you see old men like Moses Ali trying to compete, don't think that is just, I mean, it's for the love of power or whatever. I think for them, it is survival. For them, it's a do or die. You know that out of politics, you can't make it anywhere. And that shows even the situation in public service. We have seen incidents where people exaggerate their age, or I mean, either they are cutting or they are trying to forge so that they can stay in service, because out of service, life is not easy. Out of service, what are you going to do? The retirement is, even the pension they get might be spent in a few moments, so it's not even enough to cover for your basic expenses monthly, because there is inflation, there is lack of the basics are expensive to get. So as as we see old people try to grab on straws wherever they are and trying to survive, you should think about the majority of young people who are trying to make it. They've left school, they have no jobs for there. I know some people who graduated 10 years ago and still can't find a basic paying job anywhere in Uganda, and trying to make a business with high taxes. Even I saw the budget increasing more taxes, even though they made some tax holiday for small business enterprises only 3 years. That's not enough. That's not enough if you are trying to set up a business. And even if you get tax holidays from URA, you're gonna be having like trade license from KCCA or whatever. If you are in any city, you add the city councils and all those local expenses. So we should go back to examining the living standards of a Ugandan, a basic Ugandan. What is the scenario in NRM, under NRM government? What is the situation of Ugandans really basically, apart from the politicians? Of course, politicians benefit from the taxpayers, but then what happens to those taxpayers who are left without services, yet they continue to pay the taxes?
That's right, Miriam, indeed. It's interesting. I saw that the NRM hiked their nomination fees. Oh, well, a story for another day. Ochen, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn and Miriam. Greetings to everyone out there. I've been following what's happening home, but let me begin from here in Canada. This is our first day, I think, our second day for summer. Yesterday was our first day we entered summer, but interestingly, it's rained just this night. So the summer so far is not looking summer. So we hope that maybe during the course of the week, it will, evolve into real summer. And I must say that we just had you know, our elections recently, and it was, surprisingly, the Liberal maintained a slim, majority. They got, I think, 43.8%, and the Conservative, got 41.3, and the rest, shared 3%, and so on. And we thought initially that the Conservatives maybe would have taken the Liberal because in this place, every second term, most times another party comes in. Like the Liberal have been powerful the last 8 years, so we thought maybe that the Conservative would take, but there was some kind of change in the leadership of Liberal, at the last minute, and that helped them to retain, the seat. Otherwise, here too, from the international front, the conflict in in the Middle East between Iran and Israel, it's a hot potato, very sharp, and people are split, fractured about it, and we hope that maybe some kind of a more peaceful resolution comes out of that, that conflict, because if they go full blast, it might not be manageable in the long run. So we hope for, a more peaceful way to resolve the conflict. And also, I've realized that the challenge to get, you know, kind of credible news. I find that most of the media houses are a little bit, subjective in the reporting, so you can't know what's happening. It appears that one side is being defeated while the other side is, trying to profess something different. So no clear kind of authentic news we are getting, but we are getting different forms of news here. And back home, I can see lots going on the ground. All parties are trying to do the nominations, and I can see that pretty much all the political parties retain their top leadership. That's very interesting. No change. They talk of His Excellency Museveni to exit, while they also don't change. I can see DP maintain Norbert Mao in a very controversial way too, and he's there. I also see UPC can also has been retained and also with a lot of controversy. I saw they're heading to court, trying to challenge, his re-election too. I also saw, the PSF, which is, part of, is a kind of a the offshot of the FDC. Also, retaining their leader, my friend Dr. Kiza, Besigye, and then also, of course, Patrick, and Patrick might also maintain his seat, but I'm not sure. They are still trying to battle out with Mafabi, so I hope they will also, uh, resolve that. Otherwise, I see no change. So I wish that the, the opposition also could practice what they preach. They preach water, but drink wine at night. So if they say that General Museveni has overstayed, they are not any much different from their party, perspectives. And then I can see, other parties preparing for primaries, especially the ruling party, the NRM organization, caught my attention and my eyes. And I feel bad for, Muse, Brigadier Moses Ali. I think I wish, his close associates, could, you know, encourage him to consider, giving way because of his health. It'd be okay. He has done his part since the 60s and till now. I think it would be prudent for him to give way to maybe, a more fresh generation. I also see Professor Kabuntu also, bouncing back with a French cat in his poster. That's very amazing and looking young, my friend Professor Kamuntu. He's amazing and he's back too. But I wish he would have maybe remained in retirement. He would have had more respect from the populace as opposed to coming back to meddle with the youth, the youngsters, his grandkids in politics. It makes no sense. So those are some of the challenges. Otherwise, I think under the NRM, the politics has been completely, compromised, has been compromised and has been replicated with monetary, strength. If you don't have the resources, you might not do much in electioneering of Uganda. You might have the best ideas, the best manifestos, the best intentions for the country, but if you don't have the cash to give out, you might not do much. So this is the revolution that the National Resistance Army and NRM brought into Uganda. In the past, you'd have no money as long as you had the right message, you'd be voted. But right now, you cannot do that. And I don't see much. I don't see much variation from the past elections. We shall just replicate, what happened in the past. Otherwise, I look forward to, dissecting further in the next, path. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kocha Chen, for that. But let's quickly, actually, on that point where you mentioned that the parties you don't see much that has changed with the top echelons of the parties.
Yes.
I quite agree with you, and it is the biggest problem I have with my country. especially with the opposition, because they're claiming they want change, but they're not changing
Yes.
themselves, you know? So
Yes. Yes.
what gospel are they preaching if they
Yes.
cannot be exemplary in preaching this gospel? It's my biggest challenge with the opposition in Uganda. All right, away from that, Uganda is among 36 countries reportedly under consideration for new U.S. travel restrictions, and this is according to a U.S. State Department memo. It was signed by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the memo gives targeted countries a 60-day window to comply with specific U.S. security and identity verification benchmarks or face visa bans, either full or partial. So Uganda is on that list, and we know that we have been trying to improve in terms of our business deals with the US. We have been trying our best to, improve. In 2024, the US exported approximately 106 million US dollar worth of goods to Uganda and imported about 132 million US dollars, according to the US Census Bureau data. The Office of Economic Complexity further reported a surge of U.S. exports to Uganda, growing from 6.06 million in April 2024 to 23.1 million US dollars in April 2025. So you can see imports from Uganda to the US also rose by 22% between January. So we are here saying that this could potentially ruin something that was starting to look good, something that was starting to grow into progress. So Miriam, I'll start with you, and I will ask, how bad is it really? Let's start from that light point. How bad is this, or are we just perhaps running, getting ahead of ourselves?
I think it's as bad as it can get. I was reading somewhere in Mwenda's column in the Independent saying that some students who were already studying here in USA, some of them were denied their visas. And visas to return, like you go for semester break, you can't go back to continue your education. I think that's as bad as it can get. But it's not Uganda alone, and the majority of African countries are affected. So if you see how Ugandans are affected, I expect the restrictions to really be far-reaching, but there is a way out, I think. Most of these restrictions were the statement on the white on the U.S. state website said that the restrictions were mainly due to failure to have like a real dependable, like accountability, background checks, and I think lack of documentation which can be really reliable, and so many other things, including terrorists and all that. I think with good diplomacy, but it depends, since this is like a general, like so many African countries. If I were the president, maybe I would took it off. You have a checklist and see what goes, what doesn't go, whether, because these are selective restrictions. That's what they say. I don't know who is gonna be affected and how big that catch is gonna be. Is it gonna catch even the regular travelers, people who are doing business, like you quoted? The business numbers are really high, and if they are like exporters doing regular business with the US counterparts, they would be adversely affected. Or is this gonna affect maybe state officials who are corrupt, individual sanctions and all? But since it's even going as far as affecting the students, because those are really like the most innocent, the most clear. I would say maybe straightforward, like you can check their background and say, oh, so and so is coming to school, and ABCD, they're paying tuition, they're studying from where and there, it looks like more of a straightforward kind of check compared to, say, tourist visa and all that. So that means it's a big, and it needs urgent attention, and it's a diplomatic thing. It's more of international relations. It's upon the Ugandan government, the foreign ministry, to go and work with their counterpart in USA and sit down. There is one thing which is good with President Trump. If you talk, he likes talking, he negotiates, he's a deal maker. Go make that deal, go point out issues which are really stacking, which they are saying this is not good, and straighten it out. Maybe in 1 or 2 years you can make an improvement. But I would like to call upon the Africans, the real African leaders. Let this be an eye-opener. These travel bans, Lynn, are not the first. The first travel ban, which was indirect but very widely affecting many people, very far-reaching in its effect, was the COVID lockdown. Nobody banned anybody from traveling, but nobody could travel. But that was like one of those things that should be an educative moment that should have taught us that there could be one day and you can't leave your country to go, especially like our politicians who have that tendency of like, they get money if they don't repair, they don't do nothing about, say, medical care at home. When they go sick, they go abroad to seek treatment. They don't do nothing about education at home. Their children are taught abroad. They even do shopping and holidaying abroad because there is nothing for them to do back home. The country is broken down, the resources are stolen, and they don't care about public services and utility and infrastructure. So if that ban can teach us one lesson, it is to look inward and see what can we do better? How can we make our countries better for our children to have education back home? Or what can we do just in case tomorrow you wake up and the borders are closed, like we see in COVID lockdown? All borders were closed and nobody could go anywhere. What can we do better? Can we build infrastructure at home? Can we do our own resources? Can we do interstate relations within Africa? Africa itself has good schools. There are countries which have good infrastructure, like South Africa has one of the best schools. Even Uganda has some good schools if you look at the indices and how it's graded. Makerere is one of the best universities in Africa. But what can we do to make it better? What can we do to be self-sustaining as far as our resources are concerned? How can we build our country so that tomorrow when we wake up and the borders are closed, we find we have everything we need back home? And I was going to bring an example. During the 70s, the East African community used to have the infrastructure relations. You would go to Dar es Salaam and study law. You go to Nairobi, do engineering. You go to Kampala in Makerere, you study other things. So there was that interstate relations and coordination as far as services were concerned. Can we now do the same for hospitals, for research, scientific research? I saw today the South African government was saying that their research on medicine, which was going on so well as far as the pharmaceuticals and, researching on even infectious diseases was concerned, was hampered because 50% or more than 50% of the funding was coming from USA was cut. And that puts the whole research in a limbo, and they were saying it's a setback. But if suppose all African countries, say AU or FDB, African Development Bank, was to put their resources together and say, okay, let's support one country, either South Africa, or they do regionally. SADC supports its own scientific research, East Africa does the same and has a research hub in East Africa, West Africa the same, so that we can also develop our own local content, our own research and facilities enough to do our own things. We'd stop relying on other people and be as independent as we can be. I mean, the US borders being closed is not the end of the world, because the rest of the world is open. There is Europe, there is Asia. There are other continents ready to cooperate with Africa, but this should be an eye-opener. Suppose all of them also tomorrow wake up and close their borders. And why should we be the dependents instead of others being also depending on us? Last time we discussed, we said this will hamper a lot of tourism sector. It's going to be disruptive to a large extent, and because we are there, it's that shock. But let's use the shock for better. I don't want us to really be the lamenting side. I hate seeing Africans lamenting all the time. Can we be proactive and just use this for good? Look into us. Africa now has the largest young, energetic population, well educated. They are well conversant with IT, and they can do so much if we really put that human resource. If we facilitate our young people, they can come up with so many innovative ways to develop Africa. And we in a few years, it can take time, but not so long. We might end up being also independent and less reliant on other countries.
Absolutely, indeed. I think, and you know what is funny is that we often get blanket restrictions over things that other countries are doing worse than us, and oftentimes we are left out and we don't seem to have such a big voice. Yet we have a summit coming up soon. The US Africa Summit is coming up soon, and already here we are lamenting, and this doesn't look good on us at all. We need to do something. But critics in the US are saying, especially Democrats, that the Trump administration, they're accusing it of xenophobia, arguing that the expanding list of targeted nations disproportionately includes African and other non-Western countries. Uganda, of course, has not given an official statement. The AU came forward to say the US ought to consider diplomatic options. But analysts back home here in Uganda are saying if enacted, the visa restrictions could affect Ugandan students, business travelers, exporters, families, and many others who rely on the US. Now, Ochen, with all this, I mean, it's not the first time. The other day we saw that he put a tax on diaspora remittances. There's this time the Trump administration is a bit tough on a lot of things, but particularly on how it relates with other countries. Do you think this is going to affect the general international relations? I mean, between between Africa and the US in particular. Will the relations be affected in any way?
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Honestly, I'm not very surprised with the sense of direction that Trump's government has opted to take. I think even from his previous administration, it was very clear that he had a very, hard immigration policy, that was trying to target, the Muslim world and, the non-Western world. So if I see him, listing all these countries, I'm not very surprised. And in terms of relationship, I think Uganda and other African countries, don't have a strong, bargaining chip, because when you want to go into like a negotiation, you must have very solid and concrete grounds. If you're to have any meaningful negotiation, you must be able also to inflict some kind of damage on your, on your opponent or the other party. So I see that, it might compromise, the diplomatic angle of things, but in the long run, Uganda and the rest of the African countries are the main, losers in this kind of situation, because if you see, if they go ahead with the proposed policy shifts currently being, evaluated by the U.S. State Department, side concerns around overstay rates, inadequate documentation and security, and cases of immigration. This would impact areas around visa policy. The visa policy would, be affected. You find that the trade and business troubles at stake. So you find that in the long run, the African countries like Uganda would actually lose in terms of trade and business travel. The US would not mind not going to Uganda much or Africa, but I think while our people from Uganda and the rest of the continent would actually be more injured by not having these opportunities, to access the trade and business travel into the US. And then also from for example, the AGOA concerns too. Also come into, you find that Uganda is a beneficiary of AGOA, So if these kind of policies are implemented, then we are the major, losers, not the US, So in the long run, even we're going to want to negotiate or to make some kind of, peace building with the US, we shall go from a very weak, from a very weak end, you're not able to put anything on the table. So I would say that this is a good platform for the African continent, especially the AU, maybe to instill more the sense of the African, Pan-Africanism in them. This kind of, philosophy is already kind of advanced by our forefathers like Nkrumah, the Nkrumahs, the Nyereres. We are in the past advocating for Africa to be united, to create their own, continental markets, continental currency, continental army, even one passport, even maybe one governance system, so that they're able to engage in trade, share security, information, and if at all, friends like the US and others try to unpick their arms, they would not be very much affected. But right now, you find that we shall be going on our knees, to kneel before the US, because we are going from a very weak end.
All right, thank you, Chen. I've been seeing comments from different sections of course, the African states that are, responding to these. And some are saying that it is a message of disrespect and desperation. They're saying disrespect because the Trump team doesn't see the need to engage diplomatically. Desperation because rather than negotiate, they are resorting to coercion. We have the US Africa Leaders Summit later this month, and enthusiasm on the African side reportedly is very, very low, according to some analysts on the African continent. But they also highlight a very interesting area, because we are seeing that the US is lobbying for minerals. It is constructing roads. It is in alliances with many African nations. I'm trying to see if we can get the actual one. So it's allegedly an instrument of leverage dressed up as security policy. He wants control. They're saying he wants control instead of actually working together. So I ask you, Miriam, do you think this will hold? What will Africa eventually, resort to? Could we come to, are we going to cower, with these visa bans and all the other travel bans that have been extended to Africa? Are we going to give in to this stress or this pressure, as they call it?
Giving in to pressure and all that is, I mean, like that could be an overstretch, but there's going to be some, concessions, give and take. I expect, if it's trade, it's gonna be, uh, win-win situations here and there. Of course, superpowers normally take advantage. They have the comparative advantage of other countries, but Africa has a bargaining has some bargaining power now, given with the competition with from China and other Asian tigers, and then Europe. So it's not entering this from the weaker side. It's gonna be, yes, it's gonna be I see US dictating the rules, but there should be some gap for African leaders to maneuver and also put their stake on the table. And we also have to acknowledge like the big stuff happening, like the Rwanda DRC deal being brokered by USA. Trump earlier had highlighted that he's been brokering deals in Africa. There is the Ethiopian Egyptian crisis, which was conflict, not crisis. It was a conflict which was ongoing about the Nile waters and the Renaissance Dam. And I think he brokered that to a working level. They are no longer bickering. Maybe they've settled for good, but we yet to see how far that can go, including the Rwanda DRC deal. I was expecting Simon to join us in time, but he has technical issues and he's not joined us yet. But you see, in that, and the conflict, some of the conflicts are in such a way that they cannot be solved by just a deal, like a one-time deal. They need a working mechanism in place. They need a periodic peace, partners sitting on the table and discussing the way forward and resolving conflicts as they emerge, like the Rwanda DRC peace talks, because the problem here is beyond politicians fighting over power, ABCD. It's about survival of some communities. It's about tribalism. It's about the borders. It's about some historical things which need progressive resolutions. If we can take the Sudan example, like breaking Sudan from South Sudan from Northern Sudan, or the bigger Sudan, didn't resolve the Sudan conflict. They are still bickering with tribal conflicts in between, and they are struggling to build their nation. The same scenario also applies for DRC. So USA, I'm bringing DRC example because the largest mineral catch in Africa, the biggest mineral hubs in Africa, in DRC, South Africa, Nigeria, DRC plays a big role when it comes to the minerals that the rest of the world is fighting for, including uranium. So it's gonna highlight, it's gonna be high on the agenda, that peace deal being concluded around this time when the summit is about to begin is not coincidental. I'm sure it's calculated to happen in that way. And will Africans negotiate like a group, or they gonna be negotiating as individuals? That also plays a big role. If they go like individual states, they will be bargaining on a weaker note, like on a weaker post space. But if they go in as a group, if they negotiate general rules concerning Africa and African countries, especially since now we have the AFT in place and other regional blocs which can regional communities that have trade agreements with each other. I think they should approach this as a group, and that gives them like a bigger bargaining power with the USA and other countries, including China and other countries who have interest in African resources. And trade is healthy. If we can, the more trade partners we get, the better. The more partners, the more the competition, the better the bargaining power, and the more the interest and high value we get from our resources. Africa right now needs to export their resources so we get the much needed money to rebuild our infrastructure, to make sure that we create jobs for this young population that is having no jobs. The travel bans, when I was looking at the travel bans from USA, at the same time I was looking at the African European border, that border, the Mediterranean Sea, where most Africans have lost their lives drowning in that sea, trying to run away from Africa and look for greener pastures. The African young person everywhere is trying to look for survival, and they can't find it home, despite of the so many resources we have at home. So if we can rebuild back home, if we can create space enough for them, economic opportunities for the young people to stay around, so that we can export the skills, we can export maybe finished products, so we can bargain for better opportunities. Because right now, even if USA is restricting bans, you're going to find that they need workforce, which they don't have. They need skilled labor, which they don't have, skilled even and unskilled labor, which they don't have. But our countries don't have that capacity to really say that, okay, say Uganda can enter an agreement with the USA and say we are exporting the medical personnel, we are going to train and export medical personnel to you. And they go in an organized way. I think the trouble, the bans really affect these immigrations which come in an uncoordinated way. And if there was a way people can sit together and say, okay, we gonna arrange and take maybe skilled workers and they work for so many years and they come back, have an understanding and a structured way of sending immigrants or workers or whatever people want to go, whether they are students. I think that the fact of really people studying from outside is very important to Africa, especially since we need skills, we need skills exchange and people getting that exposure. If you come from outside, you come back to your country, you don't come back the same person, whether you are a student or not. That exposure, learning from other cultures, see how other people do stuff enough is in itself enough resource to enable you bring something new, some big contribution back home.
Right, that's so true, Miriam. And we have seen that many of our people are running to the US. The other day, I think he put a halt on foreign applications to Harvard. There's a lot that we are going to miss out as African countries. But of course, I think it pushes us in a corner where we have to devise solutions for our own problems. And it's been a song that has been sung over and over and over. And interestingly, we don't seem to have found solutions yet. So many African observers have proposed blacklist is not about security, but about control over mobility, influence, and economic access. Ochen, these concerns have little to do with individual migration cases and more to do with securing leverage on strategic resources and influence. The US is pushing infrastructure deals across the continent. We know Angola, Zambia, DRC. African observers are saying restricting visas may be a way to force cooperation. Do you agree?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lynn. Before I answer you, let me just comment uh, briefly on the submissions that were made by Miriam. Miriam, thank you very much for your submissions. I think you pointed out very crucial aspects and points. For example, Africa going as a bloc and have a strong bargaining power. That's a good concept, but unfortunately, I must say that we are very fractured. We are never, united or solid. You find that we shall even start going on the francophone and the anglophone. Yeah, so we are very fractured. That will not be able, and that's why we are always easily twisted, and international forums because we are not united. And secondly, you can see that the US is organizing the USA and African summits. Okay, why? Why should one country bring the whole continent for a meeting? Instead, it should be maybe Uganda and USA or Zimbabwe and USA. You see the entire continent. That's already kind of a defeatist model of negotiation and engagement. So I don't see any any light of any hopeful win-win negotiation and bargaining with with the US. I'm pissed. They even threaten a regime change. To some parts of Africa. Many of our leaders know that they are not democratic. And they are not transparent. The overstate. They have tainted human rights records. So if they try to play hardball, Trump will just say I will strike you down. So they will go just on their knees, and there will be no any kind of a balanced kind of win-win negotiation. So thank you for the submission. And Tulane, I think you asked a very insightful question. I think control and influence are the major concepts that are trying to push the USA to play hardball around these policies like on immigration, on trade. They know that if they unleash and they use their power, control, and influence, they can achieve all those goals. If you've noticed, the Trump administration, they are deal getters. They just go and get. They are everywhere. Their hands are everywhere. In fact, I think they even signed some kind of deal with Shekedi in the DRC recently, and I think supplying some kind of weapons. If you go to, other countries around, the continent, Botswana, you go to, even South Africa, they've all been twisted. So when we are going into any, kind of summit, conference, in a negotiation, in a peace building, and we are going on a very weak note. But the source of conflict here is power, control, and influence. The US using this power to control, the underdeveloped African countries, and we are so desperate. We are very fractured. We are very divided, and we don't go as a team. If we were united, we actually first meet as an AU and select just maybe one team of the AU to go and attend the USA African Summit, or even Russian African Summit. Where should African countries go and meet Russia as a country? So all these are very kind of wanting situations we find ourselves in, and our countries, our governments are on their knees. They don't have much to do. Yeah, that's what I can say.
All right. Actually, we have little or no say at all. But maybe, over the years, we have seen China's influence in Africa. And I've had a couple of analysts say that maybe it is a struggle. It is a fight for who takes what in Africa. It could be the Africa-US relations at being challenged, but also we see that as China increasingly becomes a huge partner in Africa, I think the US is threatened because it had been one of the leading partners on the African continent. Miriam, are we seeing a clash of the titans here, and we're seeing the elephants, rather the grass, us Africans suffering?
Yeah, that's also one putting it, there is scramble for Africa, if I can say it like that, because all these superpowers need African resources to power their industries. They need uranium, they need the diamonds, the gold, and all that stuff. And most importantly, they need the market for their products. So China's fight for Africa is for them. They are not hiding their interests, and they are not using politics as a cover. They are so straightforward about it. And for them, Africa, they look at Africans as partners in trade and in doing business. Actually, that was the approach of the first Trump government of 2017. They had looked at Africa as, they say they wanted to have to be business partners in Africa instead of, having that donor recipient relations of, being a benefactor and, like coming as a savior to come and rescue Africa. They wanted to be business partners. And you can't be business partners if you don't see each other at equal level, or if you don't treat each other equally. So if they come in that context, if USA comes to Africa with that mindset and purpose, that would be good for Africa. But I don't even, like I said earlier, Africa can't get much out of it if they don't come into this arrangement as a united group, either regionally or continentally as one group. So coming in as individuals puts Africa at a disadvantage, because obviously whoever pays the piper calls the music. I mean, if you have more resources, you are likely to dictate the terms of trade to the person with no resources or weaker bargaining power. So if Africa joins these arrangements or treaties as a group, that will benefit Africa. Or if they approach it as a group, even if they later, because different countries have different resources, but if they use the same standard across board and treated equally, I think it's good for Africa. And the competition, yes, it's very healthy. But it depends on how you compete. China trades with Africa as partners, even though they are the benefactors, even though they are the big boss. But they come into it as they don't dictate the terms. They don't dictate the terms beyond the trade, as in, as we see traditionally what the West does, whether it's USA or Europe, when they come to trade, they come with conditions. So China doesn't do that condition thing, and that's why its business in Africa has been smooth so far. But whichever way, right now Africa needs as many players as possible. It needs all the partners on board. So the US entrance in African market, it's been there, and the Biden government actually had introduced the investment fund, and it was ongoing. I don't know how far they had implemented that project, but it's a build-up. I see this summit as a build-up on, they might change the terms and conditions, but it looks like a continuation to what was already ongoing, which is good, even though other channels like the aid, the aid and the support into the research, especially the healthcare sector from USAID is cut. If they bring in money, it can also substitute that gap that was there. The challenge now is our African countries. How do we receive the resources? How do we utilize them? Because if that money, for instance, I'm giving an example of Uganda. If Uganda was to receive money, say for oil in trade for oil, as in how will it spend the money? I see the money being spent in politics and other useless stuff instead of being invested, say, in research and healthcare, like how the US aid money was doing. So as long as we don't organize our countries back home, At one point you really feel like if you were a USA and you are looking at Africa, all the mess, the corruption, the whole, how our leaders are missing out our economy, how would you treat such a partner? We get kicked out and we feel so sad. But if you put yourself in their shoes, what would you do to such a leaders? For instance, in Uganda, leaders who embezzle public resources, who are really messing up their own country. And the same scenario goes across all Africa. So how would you treat such partners? Would you treat them with the respect they deserve or the contempt they deserve? So it's upon us. Let's organize our own countries. Let's organize our own politics. These people who are going to stand, it's so pathetic that we still have incidences of earlier you hinted on a poll which I think happened, was it New Vision, which was saying Museveni still has the majority. Museveni is competing, but his rival is in prison for trumped up charges. So far, nobody can still prove any credible charge against Kizza Besigye. And the same scenario is happening in Rwanda. The Ingabire Victoria, who is an opponent of Kagame, also was arrested this weekend. And the only reason which is probable about it, that could be the reason for arrest, is because elections are looming. Like elections, whenever there is election season, all African leaders arrest their opponents. If you are like a news editor, you can even predict the headlines about it many years before even the election happens. That's what they are going to do. So if you are dealing with such a messed up countries, how are you supposed to treat them? I think sometimes we even deserve the contempt we get, and it's upon us to clean up our own backyards if we want respect from the rest of our partners.
Absolutely. I actually think it's not the backyards. Now it is right in our faces. It is in the front yard. It's gone out of hand. But relatedly, not so long ago, I think a few days or hours ago, the DRC and Rwanda initialed the text of an agreement aimed to stopping the conflict in eastern DRC, and that is according to a joint statement from the two countries and the United States Department of State. The development came after 3 days of constructive dialogue in Washington, D.C., regarding political, security, and economic interests. The draft agreement contains provisions on issues including disarmament, the integration of non-state armed groups, and the return of refugees and internally displaced people. So it will be formally signed on June 27th. That's next week by ministers from the DRC and Rwanda in the presence of U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We have been talking about the U.S. influence on the African continent and the bans it is giving to us, and already we are seeing how the loopholes therein, because if they're having influence on this Rwanda DRC agreement, then they're issuing still, bans on same people they are working with. It takes me back to what Miriam said earlier, that Trump is a businessman. So we know that this could also be disguised as a way of designing some deals for themselves. Ochen, what do you make of this?
That's a very good news report. And as you stated, Trump is a businessman. He will always take advantage, of situations and twist, to his advantage. As I said before, that Trump was sense of influence in the DRC and about the conflicts. And I remember they even promised to provide arms to Shekedi. And I know at one time also they issued, some threats to Rwanda about the conflict in the eastern Congo. So I'm not very surprised that right now Rwanda and DRC have come down to an agreement and are all willing to, kind of place the signatures, down for a peaceful, resolution. Though I have very high reservations because we have seen multiple peace initiatives that have taken place in the DRC, and they've never been very fruitful. So let me hope that this one here will be, productive. But knowing Kagame and knowing General Kagame, is a very uh, sharp and cunning leader. So he might just do it for the sake of, PR, but at the end of it, something different. But knowing US too and Trump, I'm very sure that there will be an impact on that. And now this brings me again to the other side of my argument about Africa and about how African countries, engage with like China, the Western world like USA, and then of course, the Eastern world like Russia. They come differently. You find that China will engage in trades as a benefactor or a prime beneficiary, but doesn't give a damn about human rights, and governance of a country. As long as their pockets are getting filled up, they don't care whether there's any kind of gross human rights abuses. They don't give a damn, and so that's their kind of model of engagements. While Russia also doesn't mind much about the democratic aspect of things, as long as you are firm and anti the Western ideologies. They will support you. Like in Burkina Faso, they're there. You go to like also in Zimbabwe, they were there with Mugabe, and so on in Libya. Yeah, so that is their kind of also philosophy. Then you come to the Western world, like the USA and the EU. They might extract your resources, your mineral resources, but also to some degree, they might want to impose their kind of democracies on you. Okay, about respect for human rights, like trying to open doors for the other, sexual orientations and genders, and then also emphasizing on, democratic, elections and term limits here and there. That is the difference between these parties. So when we are engaging like with these different powerful households, you find that still comes down to the three aspects that you pointed out of power, control, influence. That is all their agenda. So even China right now is in Africa. Actually, they're engaged in a very imbalanced trade, whereby in the long run we shall lose all our resources toward China. You go to Zambia, the copper belts has all gone to the Chinese, traders. They have nothing in China. In Zambia, you go to Zimbabwe, the same thing is happening. So even Kenya next door, the Chinese are trying to really, exploit a lot there. So that is their model. While Russia also, you go like to Southern Sudan, Central African Republic, they are also very, very, very kind of, visible there. Then USA with Trump also is trying to, stretch his hands like in Eastern Congo, to some degree also they're trying to go like to Angola and so on. So with the peace kind of agreement pending between Shekedi and Kagame, I think the bigger aspect will be about minerals in the DRC, Eastern Congo. Yeah, thank you.
On that note, actually, it is reported that Rubio said that the win, sorry, I beg your pardon, the win aims at peace and investment, and it is a win-win for them because they're looking at who takes what, and I worry because call me pessimistic, but I think we should prepare for even worse to come.
Yes.
Because if the US has its interests, of course, in investment
Mm.
and the minerals therein, I worry. We might, I don't know. Anyway, we wait to see that. But Miriam, the analysts are saying there are quite a number of questions that remain to be answered in this agreement. For example, will the M23 rebel group withdraw from areas they have occupied? Does the respect for territorial integrity mean Rwanda admits having troops in eastern DRC? You know, would the agreed return of refugees allow thousands of Congolese back from Rwanda? There are quite a number of questions that rise up. Does disarmament mean that the M23 will now lay down their arms? There's so much. So the question would be, what impact does this have, on the infights, on the warring parties therein?
I think it will just be it's good because it might bring up like immediate ceasefire which would save lives, but on the long term I don't see it ending the conflict like I earlier mentioned. I think that the conflict in the DRC is really uh, social political in that it's about deep ingrained differences. There wouldn't even be conflicts. There some incident if they were resolved peacefully, if there was like a process which can make people sit down and have long-term solutions which can be implemented over time, not even once, because resettling people, reorganizing the border doesn't take a fortune. You don't just sit down and write it on paper and it happens. So if will M23 put down their guns, yeah, but they won't them hand them over to anything. I'm sure they're gonna go in there safe and lock them away, only to be polished and brought back whenever needed, because this conflict is not gonna end so soon. It's and I wish there could be a process. You say like there was a Great Lakes peace process, which was also initiated by US and UN. I think it was mostly by UN, that had over time, tried to bring the conflicting party together, and it was a process that was ongoing, done in phases. Today you do peace ceasefire, the following day you talk about resettling people, you talk about resolving the long-term border conflicts, resettling the tribal conflicts within DRC, because the people sometimes we call refugees in Africa, especially with our colonial borders. Sometimes they are not even refugees. For instance, there are families which have relatives in DRC and Rwanda. There are families which have relatives in Uganda, DRC, and Rwanda. So there is that unresolved like long-term border disorganization that was brought. Those borders are artificial to begin with, brought to us by the colonialists. So it has been a struggle for independent African states to really dissolve those border conflicts and know when to draw the line and when not to. And we all know another big cause of crisis in DRC is the minerals, the resources. Rwanda depends so much. I know this is off record, but everyone knows, depends so much on minerals from DRC. And in most cases, since there was conflict, most of these minerals were smuggled because there was like no farm government inspection around that area. But right now, if you bring up ceasefire and you bring maybe a firm control of the government in that area, will, for instance, Rwanda find a way of acquiring those minerals through legal processes? I don't think so. Or maybe not. I could be undermining them. Maybe they will do a legal process and get trading licenses and do it the formal way. The same applies to Uganda. We know there are some minerals, though it's off record, some on record. The minerals which are brought from Congo and traded through Uganda, like the gold, which is being processed in Uganda. But then after the war, these trading partners sit down and go through the government processes, the real licensing and all that, licensing and do the export tax and all that, the formal process of importing minerals from DRC. I don't think so. So how will you resolve that? And I would think the long-term solution, even though I appreciate the short-term peace deal and the de-escalation of conflict there, because people running out from their countries and being refugees in another country forever is not very a good idea. And also there is a lot of destruction and loss of lives in DRC through fighting, which has taken forever to end. I think it's now coming to 50 years ever since that conflict has been around in DRC. Not specific conflict of the M23 and Rwanda, but having internal civil wars in DRC. And so many of DRC people are displaced, yes, yet DRC is the most resourceful country in the world almost, which could be benefiting Africa if it was peaceful. It could also be benefiting the rest of the world if people were to settle down and their resources are well processed and exported in a useful way. So having peace over there, I don't care which country trades with the DRC, whether it's USA, whether it's China, whether it's Europe, maybe all of them. But can they do it in a peaceful and a profitable way for DRC people? Can they do it without using the warlords and smuggling and all that? Even if it's Rwanda and it wants to do business, can they do it in a way that will benefit the real Congolese people and not displace them, not kill them, and not make them end up as refugees in other countries? But on a bigger note also is to look into the leadership. The problem is these leaders who have been causing conflict in Congo, as long as they are there, President Museveni, whether he's a peacemaker or a conflict maker, that also can be debated in DRC. Then there is President Kagame. As long as those two people are there, I don't know whether it's because of the real citizens of those cross-border areas, or whether it's the interest of these leaders to have interest in DRC. Because even before Museveni, I think even other leaders, I mean, like they said, there is a saying that you can't live without the DRC somehow if you are one of the border areas, either because of its rich resources or the influx of the refugees coming into your country or the conflict in DRC itself. On the long term, I wish there could be a process which makes people of DRC see it, whether they want to be a federation or if that country is too big to be managed centrally, they can decentralize power, at least to make sure that there is government control in these areas, especially East DRC where the conflicts usually happen.
A very interesting development is that the US President Donald Trump has cited the forthcoming peace deal between Rwanda and the DRC as one of several foreign policy achievements that, he says, should have already earned him the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yes, he did. And and I'm sure I'm sure he's gonna get it, because we know how those Nobel Peace Prizes work. And
I don't think Trump will get with the Iran-Israel conflict. No way.
who knows? Maybe but he has done some deals, even though he didn't end the Russian-Ukraine war. He has done some
In fact,
deals.
the Ukraine-Russian war still, even has compromised it. he does something good, and then again throws mud at it. Yeah, but let's wait and see.
He's also talking about he says it's not just one. It could be more because he says you could say Serbia, you could say a lot of them. The big one is India and Pakistan. I should have gotten it 4 or 5 times. They won't give it because they only give it to liberals. That was his quote.
No, they should give it him.
No, I'll post that.
They should give it him.
No,
To
no, no,
give
no,
him credit, by the way, that's
no, no, no. It doesn't deserve it. It doesn't deserve it. That's the right debate. It doesn't deserve it.
But truthfully,
the first thing I like about Trump, whether it's this regime or his first presidency in 2017, is his desire to end conflict. And he really worked so hard on that. And his
But
first agenda was to talk to Putin. He talked to the Indian people. Like at the pace of 6 months, he has made these. I mean, that's a big achievement, really.
he does it, then waters down. Like example, he must
Yeah,
have.
that's another debate. But
Yeah,
his
you can't
intention.
get it. If you can't get it, when you do something good and mess up the other side, that means compromises your credibility. You must be consistent.
right. Actually, Pakistan has nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in diffusing tensions with India. And
Yeah, because India was giving it a headache.
yeah, absolutely. But questions still remain, and Ochen, I come to you and ask the sustainability of this agreement. How will it hold water? Or is Trump's administration going to come into Congo and probably Rwanda, grab what they want for the term and run away, and then we disintegrate again back to the same where we came from, as Miriam has already highlighted, that they will probably shelve their guns for a minute and polish them the next minute and go do the same thing?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very great question. Though, permit me to also kind of track a little bit about and also brings it's tied to the same question you're asking. Actually, it's tied. It's going to answer the question too about you know the post colonial borders conflicts that are taking place. I have done some past studies on that, and then also you find that the strongman syndrome also plays a very critical role in that. You find that most times when strong men, their governments collapses or they die, then you find this kind of conflicts coming in. When we look at Somalia, during Said Barre's time, they were very good in '92 when they collapsed. Up to now, there has been no any unified central government in Somalia. Okay, when you go next door in North Africa, you look at Gaddafi. Okay, after his fall, there's never been any any unified central government in Libya. If you go even next door, even in like Syria, same kind of scenario. You go to Iraq after the fall of Saddam, the same. You come back to even like Sudan. You can see Sudan right now on the verge of collapse after the exit of El Bashir. So when Mobutu, was overthrown, okay, since that time, DRC has never been, one or solid as a country or as a nation. During the time of Mobutu, this kind of excessive conflict never existed. It briefly transpired in 1960s, and yeah, Mobutu tried to go there, and the goal started with Idi Amin, but it was very kind of brief. So, like when strong men fall, that gap left will always create challenges. Then when we talk of the Congo being very huge, and then maybe they think If it's some thing is too huge, maybe we should divide into multiple countries. To me, that is no remedy. You can see Sudan, Southern Sudan, Northern Sudan. In fact, I would say Southern Sudan is worse off than when it was with the major Sudan. So I don't believe in actually fragmenting countries based on that. Even Ethiopia with Eritrea, almost same kind of scenario happened. Though in the Eastern Congo, with the deal of Trump with the DRC and Rwanda, if implemented, if Trump might, untwist these parties, to follow what has been placed down on the piece of paper to be implemented, that would be good. But I'm also seeing a scenario whereby Trump is going to be overwhelmed with, domestic issues, okay, domestic conflict, okay, back home, because right now US also is having a lot of issues, and as his term progresses, he's going to be under, severe pressure. He might not focus much, Trump is more of a nationalist, that. So when he's placed in a tight corner, he might just prefer, to abandon actually even what the DRC what, kind of deal. If he gets his deal, if he gets his part of the resources, he extracts pretty fast. He might not, mind much, because I know that with time, in the next second year, third year in the US, there are going to be a lot of pressure on Trump's government. He might even lose the Congress in the next upcoming elections, how things are going. Where there right now, if we had in news, some lawmakers, was killed with the husband, another one survived assassination. So lots is going on. People are demonstrating and is using the National Guard to support, So it's under a lot of domestic pressure. But what I know is that he might want to implement the peace agreement with Kagame too. And he might not fully implement or embrace them, Kagame. He might just buy time, but he has very vested interests in the Eastern Congo. Okay. I think Eastern Congo, the best thing that should be done is stabilizing the Eastern Congo is a major thing. We ask ourselves, how did the Eastern Congo become a mess? Okay, that was Mobutu. When he was there in power, Mobutu, it wasn't a mess. So as Miriam stated, two major players in the region, if they are still alive, if they are still in power, the region will still have those challenges. His Excellency Kagame and his mentor, the mentor of Kagame, Yoweri Museveni, and the mentee, they're still there. There will be no peace in that part of the world. Okay? Yes, because even the conflict in Burundi, in the DRC, in Rwanda initially, the mentor had some hands in them. Okay? So as long as the two are there, even the peace agreements will not be fully implemented. Okay, because if you look back during the time of Bote, Benaisa, Lule, Idi Amin, those things never, took place. The kind of conflicts. They were close tribal people. They were Ugandans who had cousins in DRC, Ugandans had cousins in Rwanda, in Southern Sudan, in Kenya, but there'd never been any, that kind of border conflicts. Okay, so it's also about the personality aspects of leaders also plays a role. But in my conclusion, I will say that I don't see the US peace deal fully being implemented. It will be a short-term implementation, which will be a short-term kind of success. Yeah, because even Trump is going to be overwhelmed with domestic, overload and pressure.
Right, right, indeed. I like that you bring out the Uganda issue because then we are forced to question what this agreement means for Uganda politically, economically, and strategically, because we see we are a neighbor to both nations and we have been involved in both their
Yeah.
affairs. Of course, with some bit of restriction here and there, but we are involved. So, what does this mean for us as a nation, Miriam?
I think it's good for Uganda because the influx of refugees on that border area is really too much and overwhelming for the resources we have as a country. But basically, also for that trade, Uganda really does a lot of trade, international trade with the DRC, and once there is that conflict, that border is people can't do normal trade. I mean, this ordinary normal cross-border trade for Muntwawans, ordinary civilians. And that's very important for the survival of those communities, and they are thriving as a group, as a social group. Another point is the ADF rebels. We've seen so many incursions from ADF hiding in that area. So once the conflict stops, that's why I was saying that we need to see a strong government from DRC, a strong government presence in that region. It shouldn't just be about signing deals on the paper, but there should be government presence so that, for instance, Uganda doesn't have to go across the border to construct roads, doesn't have to deploy UPDF across the border to keep peace on the borderlines. There should be a normal border, like we have a border with Kenya, with Rwanda, with Tanzania. We should have a normal operating border, and our soldiers, our resources should stay within our border, and DRC manages its own affairs. But as long as we have a weak government presence, the local government of DRC, as long as they can't secure their borders, as long as they can't put up infrastructure to bring people back to their normal lives, daily lives, and have ordinary services, public services like roads, schools, hospitals, and all that. And as long as they can't stop the conflicts, the big conflict in DRC sometimes is not about the usual stuff, the usual civil war, about tribal differences and all that, the real big political things. Sometimes it's just simple warlords smuggling resources. They just, as anybody with access to arms and people makes a gang, goes smuggle and has trades in, and makes him sort of a small king in that area by destabilizing the people, displacing the ordinary people who can't no longer live in their homes. So the real thing, really, the most important thing we need to see, everybody needs to see in DRC is government occupying its space, the local government of DRC. And I don't know whether the current Tshisekedi government it has the capacity to really reinforce its borders, reinforce its presence in its own country, so that the foreigners, Uganda, Rwanda, and every other person doesn't have an excuse to cross over and do their homework for them. As long as we have that peace, then we save on our resources first and foremost, but also we have also peace and trade and business and people also across the border in DRC. We recently saw an incursion where ADF attacked a school and killed young people in school. But the rebels were hiding in the DRC. We have also seen several times President Museveni shows people who were kidnapped, young women being rescued from the kidnappers, the rebels kidnapping and all that. So the conflict in DRC affects Uganda in so many ways. And once there is peace, maybe we can have peace back home. As for the gold and the minerals we really get from there and export through Uganda, hopefully we can do for more trade, and we really be able to continue exporting those minerals because they are beneficial to our economy. They also bring business and some money. But as long as it's smuggling, it doesn't benefit anybody except the smugglers, and even the Ugandan government doesn't benefit from that. I mean, the Ugandan taxpayer and the former government coffers, not individual beneficiaries. So we wish DRC to have peace. DRC is a big giant. Like, for instance, they said that Inga Dam in DRC, just one dam, is enough to power the whole of Southern Africa. I mean, the Eastern Central, you see the Sub-Saharan Africa. That's how big DRC is in resources. Its own resources, DRC resources, if well exploited, I mean, people doing licensing, paying taxes, putting up infrastructure, and employing people. If there was good exploitation of those resources, the DRC business itself, DRC resources are enough to really employ even people in East African community, the young people. It would be enough to power the infrastructure. Imagine if there were big international airports in DRC, where there was big roads, big railways, and all that stuff. Right now, even the bigger AFDB infrastructure plan cannot take place because there is always conflict in Congo. So the roads of like the southern corridor, which could be passing through DRC, can't happen because of conflict. So the peace in DRC really is what everybody's really praying for. But I hope it comes sooner than later. But as East Africans also, we don't have to wait for USA to bring peace to us, literally. We should be having our own mechanisms to really negotiate and work for and do conflict resolution in our own countries. We should build mechanisms to prevent, to sustain the peace that we achieve through signing the papers. We should have early warning systems. We should have peacekeeping forces so that individual countries don't have to send their forces, even sometimes without unofficially, like when terrorists attack and you chase them across the border. So if we had a real, I know East Africa has a peace force, but it's not fully, it's not enough. It's functional, but it's not good enough to really protect all the citizens of East Africa, given the conflict in South Sudan and then DRC and the weak states we have, which are not contributing so much to the force. So if there was peace in DRC and then it was also contributing to the big East African community, and with the resource-wise also, and in human resource and even in the economic resources, that is good for everyone. It's good for Africa. It's good for the DRC people. It's good for the neighbors, including Uganda. And it's good for mankind, really.
Yeah, indeed it is. It is very good. But as we start to wind up on this conversation, another question brooms, and it's one of those areas we need to pay attention to, because we have been regionally involved in this conflict. If you remember the Nairobi, we saw that Uganda rallied its military attire and artillery to come together and pacify that region. But we see that well, maybe, I don't know, the US could do better than we did as a region. So the question here is, Ochen, that how should Uganda navigate the optics of regional neutrality, given its shared interests and border security concerns? Because we are also looking at how Uganda is missing from the table of key decision makers, or is it working quietly behind the scenes, would you think?
Thank you. With the hindsight, Uganda lacks credibility, to be a neutral player in the DRC because of its historical, records. They played a very active role in the regime change of both Mobutu and Kabila Senior. Okay, so and also they've had multiple militia groups that supported in Eastern Congo. So right now you find that the government of Shekedi does not fully trust Uganda and leadership, just like Shekedi doesn't trust Rwanda and Uganda. But I would think, Uganda can easily reinvent, itself and maybe go in as, a peacemaker. I would maybe implore that Uganda goes in and tries to, advance more of the, of diplomatic, angle of things, like trying to emphasize on peace building and negotiations with other parties in that part of the country, Eastern Congo, and also maybe should have more open engagements, with all the parties that are involved in that area, like first with Shekedi's government, and then of course also the key players in Eastern Congo. And Uganda has the resources, both the human and the military capacity, to increase those parties to bring them into, maybe, a round table if they go in a more neutral, way where they don't take side. But right now, there's no trust on the, Ugandan government by the parties that are in, in Eastern Congo. But I can see, Uganda is a very influential factor or party in the region, and they can still, pull the strings and, be a very central and a cardinal, player in the region.
Thank you. I think we've come to a conclusion, and maybe if Miriam, do you have anything to say before we conclude? Anything you want to add?
Yes, I wanted to congratulate. I know he has not won, but we have a Ugandan American. They call him Ugandan American, Indian, whatever. Mamdan's son is standing for the mayor. He's a Ugandan. He was born in Uganda. He's Ugandan parents of Indian descent.
Right.
Okay,
He's
nice.
for mayor in New York, and he's doing fine. I mean, he's even though he doesn't win, but he's putting up a real good fight. He's Zoran Mamdan is 33, and he's really putting up a formidable fight and representing Uganda on that front. And we are so proud of him, and we wish him well. And this is an example of what the Ugandan diaspora can do. Imagine if you have such a leader in such a powerful position, and that will empower our community, that will strengthen even our voice, and we be represented. If you are lobbying for something and you have such a representation, that's a plus for us as a group of community and also for the country. So we wish him well. I hope he wins. There is always early voting has taken place. I think the final voting is in a few days. We wish him the best wherever he is, and other Ugandans aspiring for bigger things in the region, in the country, in the USA and other countries abroad.
All right. Thank you. Okot, anything you want to add?
Thank you. I really want to say that I hope the electioneering kind of season in Uganda, brings out progressive and sagacious leaders that will make the country great and the region great. Yeah, and I implore the members to put aside issue of money and look at the quality and records of the aspirants.
Right. Thank you indeed. Thank you so much, Dr. Ochen, for joining us, and and Miriam for this conversation. I hope we get to have more of these and hear from more experts and more, informed people. Thank you so much for those of you who are watching us. We thank you for joining us, and we hope that you keep it here. Give us your questions or comments in our comment section, and definitely we'll take control of what you're requesting for. Otherwise, I wish you the very best. We'll catch you again next time.